My wife and I surfaced from our honeymoon scuba dive into an endless, empty ocean. The boat, with 18 other people on it, had vanished. They had left us. We were alone, miles from shore, with no radio, no land in sight, and only 4 hours until sunset. That was when the first fin broke the surface. The world returned to me in a cascade of bubbles and the muffled roar of the ocean. I broke the surface, the Colombian sun a warm, welcome shock on my face after the cool, silent depths below. I pulled the regulator from my mouth, tasting the familiar tang of salt and air, and turned to see my wife, Elena, surface beside me, her eyes wide with the same post-dive euphoria that I felt. We had done it. Our first dive as a married couple, a perfect capstone to a perfect honeymoon. But the euphoria evaporated in an instant, replaced by a cold, creeping dread. The ocean around us was empty. Utterly, terrifyingly empty. "Where's the boat?" Elena's voice was a choked scream, muffled as she ripped the regulator from her mouth. Her head swiveled, her movements frantic, scanning the horizon. I spun around, my heart beginning to hammer against my ribs, a frantic, panicked drumbeat. It didn't make sense. The dive boat, a sturdy, if slightly dilapidated, vessel that had been teeming with 18 other divers and crew just minutes ago, was completely gone. There was nothing, just an endless, undulating expanse of deep blue water meeting a hazy, pale blue sky in every direction. "They left us," Elena gasped, the words stolen by the wind. Her face, which had been tanned and glowing with happiness just moments before, was now a pale mask of disbelief. They left us in the middle of the ocean. The full, horrifying weight of our situation crashed down on me then, heavier and more suffocating than the water pressure we had just left behind. It wasn't just that we had been left. It was how we had been left. In a foolish, cost-cutting decision that would haunt me for the rest of my life. We had chosen the cheapest dive shop we could find in the small, rural town. It was a cash-only operation, run out of a dusty back room with no online presence, no reviews, nothing but a hand-painted sign and the owner's dubious assurances. The dive master, a man named Christian whose English was as broken as his equipment looked, had been lax and disorganized from the start. He never did a proper head count, relying on a casual glance around the deck. We, being the most experienced divers in the group, had been the last ones in the water. They had forgotten us. They had simply motored away, oblivious, leaving us to the vast, indifferent emptiness of the Caribbean Sea. "They'll come back," Elena said, her voice trembling, trying to convince herself as much as me. "They have to. They'll do a head count on the boat and realize we're missing." But I could hear the doubt, the thin, wavering thread of hope that was already beginning to fray. The current, a silent, invisible river within the ocean, was already at work, pulling us further and further out to sea, away from the dive site, away from any chance of a quick discovery. We were equipped with the bare minimum. The cheap shop hadn't provided emergency radios or personal locator beacons. All we had were the whistles attached to our BCDs and my single, bright yellow safety sausage, an inflatable tube designed to make us more visible. I fumbled with it, my hands shaking, and held it high above my head, a pathetic yellow finger pointing at the sky. Elena blew her whistle, a series of sharp, desperate blasts that sounded pathetically small, swallowed by the immense silence of the open water. "Which way is shore?" she asked, her voice cracking as she trod water beside me. I looked around, my gaze sweeping across the horizon, a perfect, unbroken circle. In every direction, the view was identical. "I have no idea," I whispered, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. A quick glance at my dive computer confirmed my fear. It was just after 2 p.m. We had maybe 4 hours until sunset. 4 hours until we became invisible, two tiny specks lost in the infinite blackness of the night sea. Panic was a luxury we couldn't afford. We had to act. We picked a direction, the one where the sun felt the least blinding, and we started to swim. The first hour was a grueling, monotonous rhythm of kick, pull, breathe. Our scuba gear, a life support system just minutes ago, was now a cumbersome anchor, creating drag and weighing us down. Elena, consumed by guilt, kept apologizing between ragged breaths. "This is my fault. I just wanted to save a little money. We could have spent the extra $200 for the reputable company." I told her it wasn't her fault, that it was the shop's negligence, but the words fell hollow. We were both to blame for our naivety. 20 minutes into the swim, the cramps started. Sharp, stabbing pains shot through my calves, a result of the unaccustomed strain. Each kick was a fresh wave of agony, but I forced my legs to keep moving, gritting my teeth against the pain. Are we even moving? Elena gasped, her voice strained. Everything looks exactly the same. The terrifying part was that she was right. The swells rose and fell around us. The sun beat down from above, and the endless blue stretched out to infinity. We could have been swimming in circles for all we knew, burning precious energy for nothing. Then, a new terror began to set in. Despite the warm, tropical water, Elena started to shiver, her teeth chattering uncontrollably. "Why am I so cold?" she asked, her voice filled with a childlike confusion. "This doesn't make any sense." I knew what it was. I had read about it in survival manuals, stories of shipwrecked sailors and lost divers. "That's the shock setting in," I said, trying to keep my own voice calm and steady, a beacon of reassurance in a sea of despair. "And hypothermia? Just keep moving. Keep your blood flowing. We're going to be okay. I promise." It was a lie, and we both knew it, but it was the only thing I could offer her. The second hour was when Elena's mind began to betray her. She suddenly stopped swimming, her head snapping to the side, and started screaming, her voice raw with a desperate, delirious hope. She was waving frantically at a patch of empty water. "A boat. I see a boat. There. Help us. They're coming for us." She started to swim toward the phantom vessel, her strokes wild and uncoordinated. I swam after her, my own heart aching with a sliver of false hope that I quickly crushed. "Baby, there's nothing there," I said gently, try to catch her arm. "Yes, there is. Look, they're waving." She fought me for a moment, her eyes fixed on the horizon, before the cruel mirage dissolved, leaving her staring at nothing but the mocking dance of the waves. The look of utter, soul-crushing despair that washed over her face when she realized her mistake broke my heart into a million pieces. The thirst had also become a relentless, torturous presence. Our tongues felt swollen, our lips were cracked and bleeding from the constant exposure to the salt. Every attempt to swallow was like sandpaper scraping down our raw throats. "Just one sip," Elena begged, her voice a hoarse whisper. "Just one little sip of seawater just to wet my mouth. I can't stand it anymore." I knew that drinking salt water was a death sentence, that the temporary relief would lead to rapid dehydration and organ failure. When I told her it would only kill us faster, she actually tried to do it anyway, cupping her hands and bringing the water to her lips. I had to physically restrain her, holding her arms as she sobbed, a wild, keening sound of pure misery, begging me for just a single taste. In the third hour, her body began to give up. "I can't feel my legs," she mumbled, her words slurred. "They're just gone." They had become dead weight, a useless anchor pulling her down. From that point on, I had to support her entire body, my arm hooked under hers while I used my other arm and my own cramping legs to tread water for both of us. The strain was immense, my muscles screaming in protest, my lungs burning with every breath. That's when the jellyfish found us. I never saw it coming, a silent, gelatinous predator in the water. One moment I was kicking, the next a searing, fire-like pain erupted across my shoulder, as if I had been branded with a hot iron. Elena screamed in agony a second later as another one wrapped its tentacles around her arm. The pain was excruciating, a venomous fire coursing through our veins. We couldn't treat the stings. We couldn't do anything but endure the torment and keep fighting to stay afloat. The jellyfish sting was the final blow for Elena's consciousness. She went limp in my arms, her eyes rolling back in her head. She mumbled something about leaving her, about saving myself, but her words were a garbled, incoherent mess. I slapped her face, gently at first, then harder when she didn't respond. The waves had grown larger, more aggressive, constantly crashing over our heads, forcing salt water into our noses and lungs, making us choke and sputter. By the fourth hour, as the sun began its slow, merciless descent toward the horizon, Elena was completely unconscious. I was a human life raft, my strength failing, my will to survive being eroded with every passing second. I kept losing my grip on her, watching in horror as her head slipped beneath the surface, only to pull her back up, gasping and sputtering. Each time, it took longer. Each time, I was a little weaker. The sun was a fiery orange smear on the horizon when something massive and solid brushed against my leg. My blood ran cold. I looked down through the clear, turquoise water and saw it. A tiger shark. It was at least 12 feet long, a powerful, streamlined killing machine, and it was circling directly beneath us. Its dorsal fin broke the surface 20 feet away, a gray scythe slicing through the water. It disappeared, then reappeared 10 feet away. It bumped me harder the second time, its skin like coarse sandpaper, tearing through my wetsuit and scraping the flesh of my calf. Blood, dark and ominous, immediately began to cloud the water around us. The scent sent the shark into a frenzy. It began to circle faster, its movements more agitated, its orbit tightening around us. I could see its dead black eye as it passed, an unblinking, soulless void. In a surge of adrenaline, I tried to punch it as it came close, but my fist just glanced off its powerful body, the impact tearing the skin from my knuckles and adding more of my blood to the water, a fatal chum. The shark disappeared. For 5 seconds, there was an eerie, profound silence. I looked down, my heart in my throat, and saw it rising from the depths, a gray torpedo rocketing toward us. Its mouth was beginning to open, revealing rows of serrated, triangular teeth. In that frozen moment, I knew with absolute certainty that we were about to be eaten alive on our honeymoon. The impact was a concussive, violent force. Its teeth clamped down on my ankle with the crushing power of a hydraulic press. Pain, white-hot and blinding, exploded through my leg as those razor-sharp teeth sliced through my wet suit, through flesh and sinew, grinding against the bone. I reacted on pure instinct. I twisted my body hard and kicked its eye with my free foot with every ounce of strength I had left. The shark's grip loosened for a split second, a reflexive response to the pain, and I yanked my leg free. Blood poured from the wound, a thick, dark cloud that instantly obscured my vision. It circled back immediately, drawn by its own kill. I pulled Elena's unconscious body higher against my chest, my mangled ankle throbbing with a pain so intense it made me want to scream. My mind, which had been a fog of exhaustion and despair, suddenly became sharp, focused by the imminent threat of death. I grabbed the bright yellow safety sausage from my BCD and, with fumbling, shaking hands, wrapped it around Elena's torso, securing it under her arms. My hands were so battered and numb that I could barely tie the knots, but I managed. The shark bumped us again, harder this time, its rough hide scraping my back raw. But it seemed confused by the strange, yellow object, and it backed off a few feet, observing us. That gave me the precious seconds I needed. I fumbled for the dive, knife strapped to my good leg. When the shark came in for another pass, I slashed wildly at the water, creating a chaotic flurry of bubbles and noise. The commotion seemed to disorient it, and it retreated again. I remembered reading something, somewhere, about how sharks are sensitive to the weak electrical fields generated by their prey. My dive computer was still strapped to my wrist, its screen glowing faintly in the deepening twilight. The next time the shark approached, its snout just inches away, I thrust the computer forward and pressed it directly against its nose. The shark jerked away violently, as if it had been shocked, and disappeared into the gloom below. The sun was just a sliver on the horizon now. I knew that once full darkness fell, we were done for. I wouldn't be able to see the attacks coming. I tied Elena to me with the octopus hose from my regulator, wrapping it around both of our waists. If I passed out, we would sink together, but at least I wouldn't lose her in the dark. The blackness that followed was absolute, a starless, moonless void. The shark was still there. I could feel it brushing against my legs every few minutes, a terrifying, ghostly touch in the dark. I started talking to Elena, my voice a hoarse whisper. I told her about our wedding day, about how beautiful she looked, about how we danced until 3 in the morning. My voice was the only thing keeping me anchored to consciousness, a flimsy shield against the encroaching darkness and the all-consuming pain. Hours passed. The cold had seeped deep into my bones. My teeth chattered so hard I bit my tongue. Elena's body felt like ice against mine. At some point, I saw a light in the distance. A boat? A plane? I tried to blow my whistle, but my lips were too swollen and cracked. The light disappeared, and with it, my last glimmer of hope. Just before dawn, after an eternity in the black, I could see Elena's face again. Her skin was a waxy, grayish color. Her breathing was so shallow, it was almost imperceptible. Her heart was still beating, but the rhythm was a faint, terrifying flutter. I didn't know it then, but miles away on the coast of Colombia, a woman named Pilar Garza was just starting her day at the Port Authority. A delayed report about 2 missing American divers had finally landed on her desk. She immediately began mapping our potential drift patterns, calculating the wind and the currents. She started calling every fishing boat captain she knew, dividing the vast search area into zones. She was a beacon of hope we didn't even know existed. As the sun rose higher, I saw more fins in the distance. They were circling, waiting. Back on shore, Pilar was coordinating a small armada of 8 fishing boats, adjusting their search patterns in real time. We were, unknown to us, drifting toward the edge of one of her search zones. At one point, I heard an engine. A fishing boat passed within a few hundred yards of us. I blew my whistle, but the wind carried the sound away. It sailed on, oblivious. And then, hours later, through a haze of pain and delirium, I saw another boat. I thought it was another mirage, another cruel trick of my exhausted mind. But it kept coming closer. A fisherman, squinting at the horizon, had seen a flash of yellow. He had radioed Pilar. The boat grew larger. Hands reached down, pulling me from the water. I couldn't speak. I could only point at Elena, still floating, a fragile, broken doll in the vast, empty ocean. They hauled her aboard, and the world dissolved into a cacophony of shouting, the roar of the engine, and the blessed feeling of solid surface beneath me. The rest is a blur of sirens, hospitals, and forge rips. Elena had severe pneumonia from inhaling seawater and had to be put on a ventilator. I was treated for hypothermia, dehydration, and the gaping wounds on my ankle. The news of our rescue spread, and the negligent dive shop owner, Christian, was arrested. Other divers came forward with similar stories of his recklessness. It took weeks, but we recovered. Elena's lungs healed. The feeling returned her arm. The physical scars on my leg faded. The mental scars, however, will remain forever. We are not the same people who descended into that beautiful, deadly water. The ocean, which we once loved, is now a source of terror. We have nightmares. We flinch at the sound of running water. But we are alive. We survived. We have each other. Our real honeymoon, we've decided, will be in the mountains as far from the sea as we can get. And every day, I look at the shadow box hanging in our hallway. Inside is the torn, faded yellow safety sausage that saved our lives. It's a reminder of the worst thing that ever happened to us, and a testament to the fact that, against all odds, we endured.